Hey boys and girls, it's Josh over at Wasika Christian Assembly. And I know we haven't done a Wednesday night video for a really long time, and I'm not going to do a high point lesson. What instead I've got for you over the summer, I'd like to be able to tell you some true mission stories. These are stories that happened in real life to missionaries and the people that they serve. And I wanted to be able to tell you these because I want you to know God is always at work. So let's start out today with a story called Was Somebody Praying? It was Sunday, June 4th, and missionaries Kevin and Karen had gone to a neighboring town in Spain to assist a fellow missionary with an evangelistic meeting. The meeting had gone really well, and people were touched by the Spirit of God. After the meeting had ended, people were standing around talking to each other and enjoying each other's company. Several of the men had started to load up and put away the chairs. One man began putting chairs into Karen and Kevin's van. It was parked across the street. What that man didn't know was that Karen and Kevin's 3-year-old son, Daniel, had followed him. And as little Daniel stepped into the street, he didn't look for cars. He was only 3. And just then a car was coming down the street. It was heading right for Daniel. The driver saw Daniel and he slammed on the brakes as hard as he could. But guys, it was too late. The sound of the screeching brakes filled the air, and everyone was standing around talking and wondered what was going on. The driver he did try to stop, guys, but he couldn't. He tried to swerve to avoid hitting Daniel, but it was way too late. The car hit Daniel and threw him into the air. He landed several yards away on the pavement. Now, Karen and Kevin saw the car coming, but everything happened way too fast, and there was no time to grab Daniel out of the path of the car. In horror, Karen realized that Daniel had been hit by the car, and she yelled for Kevin. She said, "Hey, hey!" And they both ran to where Daniel was lying. Was Daniel even still alive? Kevin and Karen immediately began praying. That's the very first thing they did. They began to pray for Daniel, and they called out to God for God's hand to be on Daniel. And when they got to Daniel, they were expecting to pick up, at the least, a bruised and bleeding child. But a miracle had happened. They found little Daniel lying on the ground with barely a scratch on him. It was almost as though the hand of God had caught him and protected him. The driver of the car went to the hospital with them just to make sure that Daniel was okay. Kevin and Karen were able to testify to the driver of the car, all the doctors, all the nurses, about the miraculous protection of our loving Father God. After witnessing God's miraculous protection, Kevin and Karen were wondering, was there someone else? Was somebody specifically praying for us at that time? Well, a few years later, as Kevin was visiting a church in Michigan, a man named Katrina introduced herself to him and related to him the other side of this story. See, Katrina and her husband Jeff had adopted Kevin and Karen and Daniel as their own missionaries, meaning they prayed faithfully for them every single day for 11 years. And one Sunday morning in June, as their church service was coming to a close, Katrina and Jeff were just up by the altar lingering a little bit. And God suddenly gave each of them a heavy, heavy burden, saying, pray right now for Kevin and Karen and Daniel. Pray for them right now. And individually, Katrina and Jeff began to pray. They each responded to God, praying for each of the family members, Kevin, Karen, and Daniel, by name, not knowing that the other one was doing the exact same thing. Well, a month later, after this happened, they received Kevin and Karen's missionary newsletter and read the account of Daniel's accident with absolute amazement. Guys, they quickly ran and checked their calendar and discovered that it was the very same day at the exact time that they had been praying at the altar after church. Boys and girls, do your prayers make a difference? Yes, they do. Only eternity will reveal all of the lives that your prayers have touched. It's important for you guys to pray. It's important for you to pray every day for your family members, your friends, your teachers, people you've heard about that maybe need prayer, and guys, especially for our missionaries, because they need our help. Your prayers make so much of a difference. Never stop praying. I'll see you next Wednesday here at the True Mission Story Central. All right, guys. Have a great week, eh?